Leadership fails. Another area where I have failed as a leader recently, and it's been due to a lack that I have, is a lack of communication. And now this is an interesting one because most leaders are in some form of a leadership position because they are effective leaders. Most people who are leaders are reasonably charismatic, are great at speaking in front of crowds and speaking in front of people, and are great communicators, or I suppose you could say great orators. However, and even for me, a professional speaker, we do coaching training, like I speak in front of large groups, I do one-on-one sessions, I train groups from all different sizes, and I love being on stage, and that's one of my favorite places to be. And so I even teach communication. I teach how people can speak from stage and how to communicate their message more effectively. And one of the things that I say to people is, please don't call me a communications expert, because when it comes down to communication, I'm great at speaking, I'm great at talking, I'm a good orator, but I must admit, one area that I lack as a leader is communication. I lack in communication in a few different ways. The funny thing with when I speak to people and tell them why, don't call me a communications expert, because just ask my wife. We don't communicate. We miscommunicate all the time. And obviously that causes heaps of dramas. That causes heaps of challenges. When I'm trying to lead my wife in my family, the miscommunications there, my lack of effective communication leads me to fail. My lack of communication in my organization, in the workplace, causes me to fail. My lack of communication with my team causes me to fail. My lack of communication with my clients causes me to fail. And I'm sure this is probably something you've experienced as well. Maybe you've been led by someone and you know that one of the big areas where they have failed is communication. Not speaking, not casting vision and big, from the front of the room sort of communication, running meetings and all those sorts of things. It's easy to be effective at speaking, but communication is a lot different. One area where I lack greatly in communication is transferring what happens up here to here. That I won't communicate effectively to my team what I'm thinking, my thought processes through something that we may be working on a project, and while I'm still trying to figure it out up here, I'm still trying to think and make a decision of which way I'm heading. And so I hold back all communication and all information because I'm still trying to make the decision up here. And what I find is that then leaves my team to either work too long on a project and almost have wasted time on something, or feel lost and that they're not able to know which direction to take. And the project will be dragged out for far too long because I haven't communicated with them. I've even lost team members because I didn't communicate effectively. That I knew what was going on up here, but I didn't communicate it out here. And so while I was trying to think and I wasn't ready to make a decision on something, so rather than explaining to them what my thought process was in that moment, I kept quiet. I didn't have any communication. I lacked communication, which then caused leadership failure. Another area is when my communication isn't effective, where, communication requires two parties. Communication is two ways. Communication is not just telling, because that's speaking. Communication requires two people to interact. A sender and a receiver, and I need to know that they've received it, so the communication needs to come back and forwards. And so there's been times that I've been failing with my team that I'll give them direction and then I'll run off. There's this fun activity that I do with my corporate clients that I get executives in the room and I give them all these little shapes to work on and send them to their corners to work on these shapes, and they need to communicate with each other. They need to create a shape on one side and they need to communicate with their team member on the other side of the room and tell them how to build exactly what they've built. And the number one failure with people is the communication, or they give direction in one way, but they don't clarify it. There's no reciprocation, there's no confirmation. I remember the first time that I did the activity that I was in a group and I was the only couple in the group that actually performed it well because I was on the receiving end, and every bit of direction they gave me, I gave them feedback. I said, do you mean this? Are you meaning this? Do you want it there? I was the only person that completed the activity. It's because that communication is two ways. And when we lack as a leader, we lack in that communication where we're either we're holding back information and we're not allowing our team to understand what our thought process is, or we're giving direction but without receiving feedback to make sure that they get that. Now, this is emphasized with my wife who ESL is, she's ESL, which is English is her second language. And obviously, I've had to really work on my communication to make sure everything that I say, I clarify with her. Okay, what do you understand with that? It's made even, it's amplified even more and made an even bigger example with working with virtual assistants. We've got team overseas that, in the Philippines or in India or like wherever in different parts of the world that I'm communicating something to, and I need to make sure that I'm communicating, not just giving them direction, but giving them clear instruction, letting them understand what my thoughts are, what my ideas are, what my desired outcome is. But then I need to ask them to confirm that they understand what I mean. And so one of these biggest areas that has caused me challenges as a leader is lack of communication. Lack of communicating what my thoughts are and lack of communicating instead of just giving direction. So if you want to make sure you avoid that lack of communication and leadership failures, then let's make sure we're communicating all of our thoughts, all of our processes with our team. We don't have to share everything, but at least let them understand where you're at in the process. Or make sure that when you're communicating, you're not just giving direction, but you're receiving feedback so that there's a communication. It's not just a direction.